In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the Cam2, seeing how it compares, seeing how we like it, and seeing how it works in the sport of paintball. So if that's something you're interested, stay tuned. So let's see what we got. Alright, so here's the Cam2, nice little black box. Drop this open. Alright, so obviously one of the first things we get is the owner's manual. So have that pretty standard there. Alright, and then this is the 25mm version. Ooh, this is pretty nice. This is nice and heavy. One thing I like about it has this aluminum casing on it. It feels really solid. Some nice thick glass there. Alright, what else we got? Supposed to come with some charging cable. That is probably, there we go, and a charger. So that's what it has right now. Now, one of the things that made me choose the scope Cam2 is, one of the things is it's waterproof, or at least splash proof, which I kind of like. I played paintball quite a bit in Oregon, and a lot of times, especially with camera gear, you had to be very careful with water. This one is sealed up real good. The only thing that has this opening is the charger port right here, but other than that, the card opening right here has a rubber flap on it, and other than that, it is sealed up. It does have an internal battery, but again, that's sealed so that way water can't get in it. The other thing that I really liked about it as an upgrade is this has an aluminum housing. You can kind of feel in the weight. It does not feel cheap. It doesn't feel kind of like a plastic Fisher-Price toy. I really like that because I know in paintball, if this is going to take a hit, it's definitely need that aluminum housing. So the other thing that people talked about and really were kind of excited about is this thicker Gorilla Glass in here. So thicker, able to take some hits. I'm sure if you watch some of the videos, you'll see quite a bit that where, you know, GoPros get their lenses cracked, things like that. So I wanted something more durable. The other thing that I liked that was an upgrade, and it's kind of related to just having the metal casing, is this Picatinny rail, but it is not made of plastic. It is aluminum. Spring loader right here, very easy to mount, and then you can twist to tighten. I noticed a lot of people that had the plastic ones had to get a separate one to try to mount, and many of them were complaining that the mounts ended up breaking off. I've been some people kind of jerry-rig where they had kind of like the flex ties and the zip ties to try to strap it on, which of course then they get knocked and then, you know, your camera's out of alignment. The other thing that was kind of a nice perk with this is the internal battery that's in here. It lasts for 4 hours. That's a nice addition because then I don't have to keep switching batteries too much. Now, when I play paintball, I usually play paintball longer than 4 hours. So one thing I decided to get in addition is an external battery. So a little lipstick battery here to add to it to give it a little extra life. So this one at its highest setting does film at 180 at 60 frames per second. They saw just recently they are releasing one or doing pre-orders for one that shoots in 4K. But 4K, it doesn't really sell me. I kind of would rather have a lower price point for the 180. So we'll give it a try. So this is kind of why I decided to pick it up. But right now, I think the biggest thing is we need to test it out. So we're gonna go play paintball and just overall see how it worked after a day of play. Right, so in order to test our gear out, we want to take it to the paintball field, see what shots we get. Then when we come back, we're going to talk about not only what did we shoot, but also what did we learn.
A little tight.
Yeah.
He's out! Take your butt! Yep. Yep, I see you. Ref! Ref!
Now, before I kind of go into a little bit more detail, I want to talk about how I had my paintball gun set up when I went to go play paintball, and then after playing, learning some things, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do differently next time. So first off, let's take a look how the setup I had when I went to the paintball field. Now first I'm going to talk about the camera mount. I mounted the camera on the underside, and the reason that I attached it to the underside is, one, I wanted to keep the top clear because that's how I wanted to sight. I didn't want an obstruction on the top. The other one is, with it underneath, the barrel sometimes can shade some of it and reduce at least any lens flare that comes up. The other thing is, I thought when the paintball leaves the barrel and starts dropping, it would stay in the frame just a little bit longer, so it would have a little bit more footage. Those were kind of the three main reasons that I initially put it on the bottom. The other thing, as you can see, is I attached that lipstick kind of tube battery here. I wanted to put this in because I wanted to extend the battery life. The scope cam has a battery life of about 4 hours. I was going to be playing longer than 4 hours. I want to make sure that I had battery to cover that. So the other thing is, I attached a cable here that has a breakaway. That way, if it gets bumped or things like that, it won't tear apart the internals in here. It's just a quick disconnect. So those were the main things that I had done as part of the initial setup when I was going to go play paintball. The other thing that's important when you put this in is to make sure that you put in a good memory card. I used a 128 gigabyte one, a fast speed one, because again, I wanted it to be working as well as it could. I didn't want to have a lag in the video, or I just didn't want it to work. Now, one little tip is, when you put in your memory card, you want to format it using the software in there. You don't want to format it in your computer and then put it in. It's important to do it that way. So after playing paintball, let's talk about some of the things I would change with the setup that I had done. One, this battery pack wasn't really needed. It took some space, but it's not really very useful for how much I was playing. I played about 5 hours of paintball, and in between that, we were playing a bunch of different games. It's not 5 hours of straight games. Now, this would be useful for scenario game, or if you're playing longer, just non-stop continuous footage. Absolutely, that would be great. But for what I was doing, it really wasn't very useful for that. So I'm going to remove this, the mount, the battery, and the cable, because it's not really needed. This camera's 4-hour battery life does plenty. So I'm just going to leave this and get rid of the accessories. I will keep this back at the staging area because I can use it to charge my stuff, but to have it mounted in my gun and carry it with me on the field wasn't very useful for my style of play. Now, overall with the camera mount, I am still going to keep it on the bottom, even though I had some problems with some shots. It really struggled with times I went on top of the bunker, because if I went over the bunker, once the barrel clears, I'm going to be shooting. However, the camera hasn't cleared the bunker yet, so I missed on some of those shots. However, the overall drawbacks of having it on the top versus having it on the bottom still make me want to keep it on the bottom, because I'd rather still have that line of sight. I'd rather still have it protected. And that's kind of the main stuff there. So overall, the camera actually showed that it was more sufficient in doing what it needed, and I didn't need all these kind of support accessories as much as I thought I did. So I'm gonna go over just some basic stuff that often people ask. So I'm just gonna go over some of the software. I turn on my camera, and when it's flashing the blue and the red and kind of the purple colors, that tells me it's looking for Wi-Fi. So I'm gonna try to connect to the camera. And there we go. So now I'm gonna connect to the camera. All right, so there we go. So everything that the camera is looking at, I can see. There we go. So I'm gonna set it, just kind of still it right there. Now here's some of the things I wanna go over that, just real basic things. You need to fine tune it depending on what you want. For white balance, I just keep it auto. For ISO, I also put it auto, because with the white balance and ISO, the camera thinks a lot quicker than we do and adjusts quicker. And when I'm playing paintball, I don't want to be thinking about the light setting, the ISO, all that. I want the camera to do that work for me. So, because I'd rather be playing paintball than messing with the camera at the same time. It's just too much distraction. When you look at metering, this kind of determines the framing. I'm choosing center. If I do kind of average, that works all right, but it kind of comes into conflict, I think, when you're playing in the woods and things like that, because it's going to take into account the branches in front of you to the branches behind the player you're shooting at. It's almost too much information to try to frame that up. If you do spot metering, the downside is if I'm trying to, let's say, shoot that door, but then I aim high to try to lob it in, it's going to focus on up here. It's going to focus, look at more at the sky and adjust to the sky rather than there. So I do kind of weight center, and that's just my personal preference. You can adjust how you like to do it. Whoop. Let's get back in here. Sorry. Confirm. All right. Now we're going to go into settings. So here's some things that I do. That again is kind of your preference, but this is what I like to do. Auto sync time, I turn that on. Date stamp, I do not want date stamps on the bottom. I don't want that, because even if I had it in, I'd have to edit it out. Auto shut off, very important that you turn that off. Otherwise you could be playing and then it just dies. There's like different options in here. 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, forget it, just turn it off. Front light, I prefer to have the front light on just because I can quickly look down and see it. Now, some people, if you want to go more stealthy, you can turn it off, but I like to have the lights on just because then I can just quickly glance at it. Audio, I turned the audio on, and the audio wasn't bad. I had only ran into some issues with when the wind was coming across the backside. That's that audio, it's that little pinhole right there, and actually I was surprised how well the audio was. Loop recording, in general, turn loop recording off. Loop recording is where once it gets to the end of its memory, it starts recording back over old film. So you really don't want to have that happen. You can change its name, blah, blah, blah. But this was the main stuff in the beginning that I chose. I think the biggest things, like I talked about, is make sure you turn off the auto shut off. That is probably one of the biggest things you really need to do. So overall, I'm really happy with how this turned out. I think this camera was great. It's super easy to use. The price point was good so pretty much you're getting kind of your bang for your buck. They do have the 4K version, but again, I'd rather have a lower price point. I think it's worth more to have a lower price point than just the quality of the footage. When you look at the battery life was good. The lens, it was durable. It did take one hit when we were playing, and didn't even notice it. So the other thing I like, again, is that metal mount. It really sticks on really well and holds. Again, these are some of the complaints of the earlier models. So overall, definitely worth the bang for the buck with it. I would get it again. I would recommend it to people. Now, I also don't have other versions, so I have nothing to compare it. So this is kind of just a standalone review of how this worked. All right, now let's talk about some of the drawbacks of this. And really, the drawbacks actually don't even relate to the camera. They relate to me and my play style. Now, for the last 15 years, I've been playing with a pump, and the pump has, with stick feed, so it's a rock and cock system. So passively, I almost always keep my barrel down, and I'm also prefer to play as a front player. The downside is this made about 90% of my footage pretty much useless because a lot of it is just looking at the ground. This was not the camera's fault, this was my fault. And so One thing I really have to keep in mind is that the tip of my barrel is now the camera. And so keep in mind that when I film for that, if I want to keep my barrel up, I need to think about how to use it for the edit. I think this camera right out of the box works great for probably back players, people who want to be snipers, things like that, because you're usually keeping your barrel up and you might be on Overwatch kind of style play anyway, so you're already going to have the camera down range looking. For me being in the front, I do also a lot of snap shooting, so that popping in and out a lot of times doesn't work too well because I may shoot and go back in before I see the ball even hit the player. In that case, none of that gets caught on film. So I think when I go out, I have to be more mindful about how I'm playing in order to get just better footage. So if you made it this far, thanks for watching my review of the Scope Cam2 made by RunCam. I hope you found this video helpful. If you have any questions or comments, please just post them below. I think my main goal of making this video is to get more exposure for paintball on media, YouTube, Facebook, things like that. So I hope that this inspires you to kind of go out, film your games, share your games, so more people can see it, and so ideally we can get more people playing the sport of paintball. Anyway, so I hope you have a great day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.